Hello, welcome to another episode of Sewing in Scripture. Today we're going to be going through the introduction to the book of Genesis. We are going to be starting our series in Genesis at this time. Genesis is 50 chapters long. No, we're not going to spend the next 50 weeks going through Genesis. I'm going to condense it. The chapters are going to consist of 20 videos. So, including this introduction video, we'll have 21 videos in our series for Genesis. So, buckle up, it's going to be a very long ride. So the book of Genesis is the book of beginnings. It records the beginning of time, life, sin, salvation, the human race, and the Hebrew nation. It begins with primeval history centered in four major events: the creation, the fall, the flood, and the dispersion of the nations. Genesis then narrates the history of four great patriarchs: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. But before we continue, if you are enjoying these videos, please be sure to hit that like button. It's that little thumbs up there at the bottom. Also, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Remember, YouTube is not going to let you know when new videos come out if you don't let them know. And make sure that notification bell is checked as well. Make sure you have it selected to all. In addition, go ahead and leave me a comment. I always like to hear from you and see how you're enjoying the videos. Any feedback is appreciated. And finally, go ahead and give these videos a share. We are called Sewing in Scripture after all. We need to be sewing into others. And if you enjoy the sewing portion where it's needle and thread sewing, well, you can watch the shorts for that. So let's go ahead and continue in our introduction in the book of Genesis. The title Genesis is Greek, meaning beginning. With very few exceptions, until the 18th century, Jewish and Christian scholars alike believed that Moses wrote Genesis. His authorship is supported by the Samaritan Pentateuch, the Palestinian Talmud, the Apocrypha, and the writings of Philo and Josephus. During the 19th century, higher critics began to question, they deny, the Mosaic authorship of Genesis and of the Pentateuch. These critics preferred to use the documentary hypothesis in determining authorship. Using the initials J, E, D, and P to identify four different alleged source documents. This theory suggests that the Pentateuch is a composite of several documents. The J document was attributed to the author who preferred the name Jehovah and was assigned an arbitrary date of about 850 BC. The E document prefers the name Elohim for God and was dated at about 750 BC. And D document was identified with much of Deuteronomy and was dated at around 620 BC. The P document was identified with a priestly writer in the post-exilic period, nearly 1,000 years after the time of Moses. But there is no valid reason to reject Mosaic authorship of the Pentateuch, with the exception of the record of his death in Deuteronomy chapter 34. The Pentateuch itself attests Mosaic authorship in Exodus 17:14, 24:4, 34:27, Numbers 33:1 and 2, and Deuteronomy 31:9. The Old Testament references outside of the Pentateuch are found in Joshua 1:7 and 8, 8:31 and 32, 1 Kings 2:3, 2 Kings 14:6 and 21:8, Ezra 6:18, Nehemiah 13:1, Daniel 9:11 through 13, and Malachi 4:4. New Testament references to Mosaic authorship are also not in short supply. Matthew 9:8, Mark 12:26, John 1:45, 5:46 and 47, Acts 3:22, Romans 10:5. Jesus himself clearly stated that Moses was the author of the Pentateuch in Luke 24:27 and 44. What can be inclusively said about the Pentateuch can particularly be said about Genesis. Moses lived for 120 years. The first 40 years of his life were spent as Pharaoh's son, learning the wisdom of the Egyptians. He spent the next 40 years of his life in the desert of Midian as a shepherd. The final 40 years of his life were spent wandering the Sinai wilderness with the children of Israel. He very likely wrote all of the books of the Pentateuch after his call to lead the people out of Egypt, as he recounted Exodus 3. This would have been in his last 40 years of life, during the wilderness wanderings. Genesis is the foundational book to the rest of the Bible. Its important theological themes include doctrines of God, creation, man, sin, and salvation. It teaches the importance of substitutionary atonement and of faith in God's revelation of himself in mankind. It also records the first messianic prophecies of the Bible, predicting that the Redeemer would be born of the seed of a woman through the line of Seth, a son of Shem, and the offspring of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the tribe of Judah. Genesis covers more time than any other book in the Bible. It opens with the words, "In the beginning, God created," and it ends with, "In a coffin in Egypt." It covers the whole plight of man, who was created in God's image to live forever, but because of sin, became destined for the grave. The book leaves the reader anxiously anticipating the redemptive intervention of God. So that's the entire introduction to Genesis. Today's going to be a shorter video again because it is an introduction, but we just want to give you an overview of what we are in for as we go through this particular series. Once again, if you are enjoying these videos, please hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell, and leave me a comment. Also, make sure you share these videos. We are sowing in Scripture after all. Let's sow into others. You never know who may need to hear a word from God today. It might just be the word that you pass on to them. Remember, we are planting seeds. It's not necessarily our job to force them to grow, but it is our job to plant them. And in many times, it's also our job to nourish them or nurture them, to help them along their way if that seed has taken root. So, once again, thank you for joining us, and welcome to the new series of Genesis. We will be together for the next 20 weeks just going through this book. So I hope you have a wonderful and blessed day, and we'll see you next week, beginning in the beginning.